Good evening, folks. It is hard to believe that this is our last evening of being together this week. I have enjoyed our lessons this week. Short, you couldn't go into detail on anything, but it's been rich to me. As a matter of fact, yesterday when we got done, the people across the street started applauding, and the people down the hill. You just never know who's listening and what's going on. So I went in and got ready for this episode and came back out, and Brother Robert is wanting to know what's going on with his mic. And I said, well, it could be that I left it laying in there on the table. So everything had to stop and wait for me to get the microphone. Then we had to change the battery. Well, I guess that was good because the battery would have gone out in midstream someplace. So, see, God just works it all together and works it for good. And we're going to end up with David tonight and this section where he went out to fight Goliath. I think it's awesome because in verse 47 of chapter 17, David simply declared, the battle is the Lord's. If I get anything through to you today, it is the battle is not yours, but the battle is the Lord's. Now, something amazing happens after this transfer from David going out to face Goliath and God giving the victory, and he comes back in. Everything is going good, and then something happens. At the very beginning of chapter 18 of verse Samuel, it said, and it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. You understand what took place at that moment? It was a covenant relationship that was built and established on one conversation. God is awesome. When he brings the right people together, if you're walking and talking with God, he will make everything good and firm. This covenant relationship between David, a shepherd boy, and Jonathan, a king's kid, took one conversation. David taking care of sheep, Jonathan next in line to sit on the throne. Isn't it amazing who God connects together? God is liable to bring anybody into your life or put you into somebody else's life for a covenant relationship that he can sanction and he can bless. It's awesome. Covenant relationship. I am in covenant relationship with God as you ought to be. But Jonathan and David were in covenant relationship. What the Bible teaches us, that the two of them became soulmates. Well, that's a phrase that's tossed around quite a bit in our society today, but may not mean quite the same thing as this with Jonathan and David. It simply teaches in their relationship your mind, your will, your emotions will be knit together. Jonathan loved David as himself. David loved Jonathan as himself. That is an amazing statement. One of the things that happens in the church and the family of God, if we're not careful, we throw around a phrase like, I love you, sometimes too easily, when what it is, we just care about one another. But Jonathan and David loved each other as themselves. When you come to the place that you love somebody as you love yourself, you have attained something. And so this whole thing took place. And look what happened in verse 4. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword and his bow and his girdle. That, my friend, is investing in someone else. And you know what's amazing? We are not told what David gave back to Jonathan. We're told what Jonathan did, but not David. But yet, they were needed together as one. They did all of this. And in the covenant ceremony, they would exchange robes. They would exchange armor. They would exchange a belt. They would exchange rings. And they would exchange shoes in this type of covenant relationship. Well, we understand the robe and the armor and the belt, but what about the ring? The ring represented position. Jonathan would have exchanged his ring with David, therefore signifying that David is now placed in position and familiar places. Do you remember when the prodigal son went to his father? And I'll paraphrase. He said, Dad, give me my portion of your inheritance. Whatever I'm going to get from you when you die, go ahead and give it to me now. I want to go ahead and go my own way. And he went away, he got his inheritance, and he wasted it on riotous living. And one day, eating in the pig pen, he said, my father has servants with bread and enough to spare. I'll go back to Dad's house and I'll say, Father, I'm not worthy to be your son. Make me as a hired servant. But when he got up and headed home, to get back to the house, he had to walk down the same road that led him away. And the word said that the father saw him yet a great way off and knew that his son, which was lost, had been found and come home. And the Bible said Dad ran to him and fell on his neck and kissed him. And then he told the servants, kill the fatted calf. Bring forth the robe, put it on him. Put shoes on his feet. And then he said, bring forth the ring and put it on his hand. Now understand, the prodigal son had already used up all his inheritance and all of his money. But Dad said, put the ring on his finger. And what that ring did, anywhere that young man went, he could put the impression of that ring down in wax, and it was the best MasterCard, Visa card, any card that you could imagine, because Dad was saying, with the impression of that ring, understand, I will stand by it. I want you to know that God has impressed us with the stamp of the Holy Ghost. And God said, I stand by him. I love my child. I love my daughter. And he loves us with an ever, never failing love. And so Jonathan and David became soulmates that day after the killing of Goliath. Let me tell you something. God will put someone in your life that will transform you and be there for you if you'll just listen to what the Spirit has to say. Listen, have a great night. Have an awesome day tomorrow. May you feel and experience the grace, the power, and the blessings of God. Until the next time, God bless you. Go with God, and God will go with you. Remember, I love you in the love of the Lord. Goodbye.
This question.